Vibhor. Hello, everybody. Hope you are able to listen the voice properly. So my name is Anirudh. I'm part of the technical account manager team with UiPath. I've been here for 2.5 years now. A little bit about my background. I have around 5 years of experience in the RPA field, know most of the RPA tools in the industry. Um, Played a lot of roles in a typical COE model, starting from a business analyst to a solution architect, been a developer long time back. Um, right, so yeah, just a small background. So Vibhor mentioned that how should we identify the right process for the automation. The word how, that's very important, right? This session is not about to understand the what, we are here to understand how, right? And the methodology of how to identify the process, right? So let's begin with, so Vibhor, when can we launch the poll, or is it that the people can see the poll
So can
themselves,
you
or,
launch the poll?
all right,
Because I joined
so
from a different device, so I'm not able to launch it.
I will go ahead and launch a poll. Guys, this is a very short poll just to understand your roles. Right, so there's 28 people. We are almost 70% through. Closing in on 80% of the votes.
I think we can start then based
All
on,
right,
yeah,
all right.
you can close the poll now.
So, right. So basically, the thing that we see is most of the people are from the development, architecture, and other roles rather than business analyst. But there are a few business analysts, so good to have them on the poll, on the call. Right, so thank you for joining again, everybody. We will try to make this as interactive as possible. I know you will not be able to unmute yourself while I speak, but please use the chat window as much as you can for any questions and doubts on any of the slides. We will have a dedicated question and answer session at the end. So let's begin. So a short agenda of today, we are going to first look into an RPA delivery lifecycle. It's very important to understand where does this specific activity of identification of the process comes in, where in the complete lifecycle. And then we should look into what should we look to automate. Don't get confused between the how, which was said earlier, and what should we look. The what is here we are looking for is the characteristics and not the process, right? The next is, again, the process characteristics and the qualification metrics. We will deep dive a little bit about on that. The complexity factors, the low, medium, and high, aligning the process into those complexity metrics, and then estimating the delivery time of the project, and what's in the future. So what we are doing now, what we can do in future when we talk about how to identify the process, right? So what's in store and what's UiPath doing in this space. So a typical RPA delivery lifecycle, it begins with the preparation of the RPA, where we identify the process candidates, which is basically creation of the pipelines for automation setup, and then setting up of the project team to understand how many developers we require, how many testing team we require, solution architects, etc. All the different roles, agree on the implementation timelines, and also the approach. So preparation of RPA is not only about just to create PDDs, but it is a lot to do with business case. It has to do with the approvals, getting all the stakeholders on one single page. There's a lot of other activities as well. Moving on, once we have received the proper approvals based on the business case and the PDDs, we then move into our technical team side, where we submit the PDD to a solution architect, who would then go through it, find out the technical feasibility of the PDD, the as-is process, And then they will define the to be process along with the business analyst. And then again, based on approvals, we would then start the implementation or the building of the RPA solution, create those workflows, use RE framework, use a small sequence based on the complexity of the process defined. Again, there are all the CPs that you see are checkpoints. So there are checkpoints on every phase completion. So there's an entry and exit criteria for everything. So once we have developed RPA solution, we have to test the RPA solution. So different kinds of test, UAT, regression test, integration test, different kinds of tests that we would be doing, and multiple cycles of test. And based on the test results, if it's a success, we would go ahead and deploy it on the production and then move to the hypercare stage. If it is not a success, it would be a repetitive and iterative manner. It would go back to the development and then again come back to testing. So it's not very different. It's very little away. Okay, so it's very simple. A typical delivery lifecycle, nothing very fancy. It's very similar to any software lifecycle, delivery lifecycle. What should we look to automate? Now, in the beginning, we did mention that we are not going to find out, or this session is not about what should we look to automate, or what is the right process to um, or how to, it's basically how to identify the right process and not the what part. So if we had to say what process, then it would be like, okay, go and find out in the finance division, these are the processes in the finance division, that's the what. But we are talking about the how. So the method of the identification is what we are going to learn about. So typical characteristics of processes which we should first consider to automate is to look into highly manual and repetitive process. Very important, it should be highly manual. If it's not manual, it's already automated. So there's no point in choosing the processes which is not manual. And it should be highly manual. Okay, and repetitive, of course. So repetitive would be anything which you do on day-to-day basis, a weekly basis, at least a monthly basis. I would not recommend anything which is done more than, let's say, only once in 3 months, in a quarter, or a half yearly process. And we would get to know why am I saying that. It should be a rule-based process. Why it should be a rule-based process? Because even though RPA or intelligent process automation, the name intelligent and robotics all comes into it, but end of the day, it is still computers. It would not understand, it is not cognitive. It would only understand zeros and ones. It would only understand programmatic language. And if the process is not a rule-based, we would not be able to program it, right? So we need processes which is rule based, if and else. Processes with low exception rate. Again, very important factor or a or a criteria. And why do we say the processes with low exception rate? It has to do with the timelines. So the processes with more number of steps, which has lots of different branches that it can a process can be performed or completed. Then you have to write those many number of codes. The code length would increase. That means the complexity would increase, which also means your testing time would increase. And typically your whole timeline of the development and implementation will be high. uh, Not a very good state for a process to start with, at least. Of course, we will get those processes as we go on and move on. But yeah, not the first candidate to look for. Processes with standard readable electronic input. Again, as I said, that it is basically the computers which understands zeros and ones. If it is not a digital input or a data which is already present and can be and is readable for the system, it is tough for the system to process that. Now, we know that we are now getting into scenarios where we look for scanned images, automating scanned images, and we have techniques, but then the accuracy factor comes in that, right? So uh, first, again, these whatever categories I'm telling you or whatever criterias I'm telling you, these are like the first choice. Yeah, there could be other choices. There could be, you cannot say that I would not automate anything which doesn't have electronic input. Of course, you can scan any document, get it into the system, and then there are ways that we can get the data out of scanned images and scanned documents as well, but not the first candidate. High volumes, low complexity. Of course, I mean, highly manual plus high volumes as well. Um, it's very simple to understand. I mean, if you are doing a process which is of a low volume, which means you're not spending a lot of time to process that. You just spend maybe, let's say, 1 hour because there's only 10 invoices that you process in a day. Um, Not again a very great candidate to start off with. But if you have a process which you can spend around 8 to 9 hours, um, those are, candidates which should be taken up at first. And of course, low complexity. We already told about the exception rate. The lower the exception rate, the lower the complexity. Stable processes and underlying applications. Again, this is also a very important factor. Stable processes means a process which is not changing a lot. When I talk about process not changing a lot, choose for or look for processes which is being done through at least 2 to 3 years without any change. Uh, Here the change is towards the business side. The rules are not changing. The process rules are not changing. The SOPs are not changing. New steps are not getting added. So those processes qualifies to be called as stable processes. And then the underlying applications. So let's say in any invoice processing, you would have an ERP, you would have input source, you would have an output source. Now, if your ERP keeps on changing, you keep on adding more screens to it. It's a change. And with every change, you have to recode them. So the moment there is a change in the application, the code on the bot would fail, and it would be a visit to the coding stage, back to the coding stage, and then to the testing stage, etc. So your timelines again for the implementation would go for a toss, right? With if the underlying applications keeps on changing. Process performed by large teams. So it's related to the high volumes again. Now, the high volumes example which I gave was one person taking 8 hours. Now multiply it with a larger team. Let's say now you have 10 people working on the same process and everybody is taking 8 hours. That's a very good process to start off with. Plus, of course, the rest of the criterias. And it is a mature and a swivel chair process. So it's even if it is there are little changes, that is, it's easy to manage. So that's what a mature and a swivel chair process would be qualified for. Now, why do we say all these criterias are important? What is the factor that would get impacted if um, one of them fails, or basically if all of them fails, or we choose processes which is not the first candidates for all these criterias? What is the one factor that would be impacted the most? If you have any answer, you can go ahead and type it out on the chat. um, Vibhor, are we also giving some prizes if we have most right answers or something?
So we will ask more question later
Yeah,
on
sure,
that.
sure.
Yes. Go
So
ahead with
guys,
this
this
question. Yeah.
yeah. So guys, if you there's not an official question for the price distribution, but then if you can let me know what is the major factor that would get impacted if these processes or the criterias are not followed properly. What do you think would get most impacted? I would wait for a minute if you have anything on the chat. Else I'd go ahead and proceed.
And you never know. First answer might get some goodie as well.
Yeah, that that can be. I have the first answer from Sonesh. It's called ROI. I have an interesting one from Vikas, says customer will run away. Missing out on SLA. Solution will not be effective in longer run. Rule based is must. Everybody is actually right, but the word which I was looking for was ROI. So Sonesh, yes, the most important thing which will get impacted is ROI. And yes, eventually, because of ROI, the customer will run away and all of the other things that you said would happen. Okay, so everybody understands ROI, which is return of investment, which is nothing but for starting any process, you have to purchase a lot of things, right? So you have to purchase licenses, you have to purchase infrastructure, you have to purchase the time of the resources that is being that is the implementation team's time. So all these are cost. Now, once you have automated something, you want those costs to come back, or you want to cut down those costs. So you're looking for savings. ROI is basically when you find those, when you find that that point where your cost is now um, being diminished to zero, and then you go into profit, right? So that's ROI. So let's move on. Okay. Sorry for the formatting of it, but what should we look to automate? So in order to best benefit of a rapid ROI, we should choose processes which have passed through a transformative initiative or are a stabilized process. If it's a stabilized process, for sure, we can go ahead and then start looking for scoring the processes in a way that it can be prioritized, it can be bucketized on different categories and different complexity, and taken forward. But if it is not, it should go through a transformative initiative. A transformative initiative such as Six Sigma quality projects, a green belt project or a black belt project, or just a lean project, right? So those are a few of the re-engineering things that needs to be done before we jump into the automation. And below you see is a simple guide to choose the best fit for automation. So this is similar to what we saw earlier, but this is like on a flow chart wise. It helps you to decide, um, and it helps you to decide to choose the best fit, right? So once you start, you choose the first question you ask to the process is this process highly manual and repetitive? If it is a yes, you move on to the next question. If it's a rule based, and so on and so forth. But if you see there is no to everything, so if there is no to most of the things that you see on the first flow, then it means that you have to apply some process initiatives. So it is not rule based. So for making it rule based, you'll have to do some re-engineering, some changes in the process rules. You have to add some rules. Standard inputs is not there. Maybe initiate a new rule of taking inputs in an Excel format rather than let's say in currently it is taking an email. So you change that process a little bit, modify it so that the process becomes more standard, etc. So once you have crossed this, then we check for process method can be changed. Now the processing method can be changed. If it says yes, then there is a problem again. Then you have to implement the self-service, because if the process method can be changed, that means, of course, it will change. And then if it changes, then it would become more on the judgment of the person. So whenever there is a possibility of judgment or the point of judgment comes in, it is something that we would not recommend to automate all the time. Of course, there are attended ways of automation, but then uh, ROI factor, right? So again, so the processing method can be changed. If it is a no, we check if it is a high process volumes is there. If it is no, then you investigate the potential tactical solutions. Why is this not a high process volume? Or why are we choosing a process which is not having the kind of volume that we require? Will minor automation improve the process? So minor automations could be anything, right? a small VBA macro. If it is required, then first initiate the VBA macro and then come back again and go ahead. And then check for deep system changes required. Now, if you say deep changes, VBA macro is not a very deep change. Deep changes would be to introduce a completely new system or a new application altogether. Then again, it would require a re-engineering process to go through. So there actually was a text which is missing in the front of in order in the first line. So the crux of this page or the crux of this slide is basically that not all processes are ready for automation. This is like at before you start, not all processes are ready for automation. There would be some, there would be actually many, there would be some which is not. And we need to be cognizant to the fact and tell our management the clear picture with with the proper reasoning behind it. So we have performed these activities, and this is how we decided that this process is standardized, this process is okay for automation, this process is not okay for automation right now. Okay, moving on. Another short game we can play is the process characteristics and qualification metrics. Now we know by looking at the previous two slides, few of the characteristics, there's highly manual, rule-based, electronic readable input types, standard input, low exception rate, etc., etc. So we have three processes in here, and let's just load the scores for all the three processes. So process A, process B, process C. Which one do you think should be the first process and the second process and the third process? What should be the priority of the processes that we should look to automate? You can again use the chat to answer it. Sorry. Okay, so I have quite a few answers again, and it most of them says A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C. A is the most, C is the least, A. Again, everybody is correct. Somebody has told CBA. Uh, okay, somebody has told BAC as well, and Samir has told ACB as well. Okay, so let's again look into the processes once more. So the process A has almost 75% is highly manual. Process B has 50%, process C is 50%. So higher the manual and higher the repetitive work, the better it is. So process A wins on that part. So on the first characteristics, it is A. The second one, A is 50% rule based, B is almost 60% rule based, C is 25% rule based. So in that, B wins the rule based process. So A has 1 point, B has 1 point. Electronic data input, A has 60, B and C are less, so A wins there. So A has 2 points, B has 1 point. Standard input, again, A is more than B and C, so it's more standard. It is the input types are more standard, so A wins in there as well. So A is now 3 while B is still 1. Low exception rate is 50. B is actually high on exception rate. It's almost like 60, 55 to 60. C is actually less in exception rate, so actually here C wins. So A has like 3, B has 1, C has 1. A high transaction, very high transaction for A, almost 90%. B is less. C is also high, but A is higher, so A wins here. So it's 4. And B is 1, and C is still, actually, C is 2. And B is 1, or, oh no, yeah. sorry, B is also 2. So B is here, which is 2, here is 2. So both are 2. A is 4, B is 2, C is 2. And finally, system changes. Least is system changes is of A, and then it is B, and then it is C. So A will get 5, then it is B, so we can give them a point with say 3, and then C doesn't get any. So typically what we say is whatever has been written here, A, B, C, it can be the same kind of the priority. So A, B, C would be the right answer. Hope it's clear to everyone. If not, you can post your questions. I will take it during the Q&A stage. Okay, so A looks higher, then it comes B and C. So A is the most one, and A is the best fit for automation, followed by V, while C should be subject to a lean Six Sigma transformation approach prior to considering to automate it. Right, so, okay, complexity factors, right? Now, earlier what we spoke about was characteristics, right? Characteristics of the process. Now we are talking about the complexity factors of the process. How do we define a process to be a low, medium, or a high complex? What does it mean when we say if we define something as a low, medium, and high, how it would impact? What would it impact? So to understand that, first let's understand what are the complexity factors. The first complexity factors is the number of screens. Now, why do we say the number of screens is a complexity factor? Complexity factor of number of screens involved in a process can be taken as a proxy for the number of steps. So if the number of screens are more, that would mean the number of steps is also more. The more number of steps, the more number of code you would have to write. The more number of activities you have to drag and drop on your workflow, the more complex it would look like. The more time it would take to build, the more time it would take to test. So it would increase your complexity with the increase in the number of screens. Second is the variations and the scenarios. Within the process, if the number of if else increases, again, your complexity would increase. Let's say you have less steps, but you have more scenarios. You cannot have less steps if you have more scenarios. Of course, every scenario will be considered a step as well. So more number of if and else conditions, the more number of variations that you would have in a process, different ways of doing it. Uh, every condition will lead to a number of set of steps. Then it become complex because if and else you would lose track of writing the code to manage the code, and also the number of steps will also increase. Again, the same thing will follow based on the time to take to develop and to test. Standard inputs, you don't have a templated input, so you don't have basically the most and the easiest templated input is an Excel file, and that too a properly defined Excel file. It is not that an unstructured Excel file. So a structured Excel file considered to be the best input file that can be provided to the systems. So if it is not an Excel file, everything else will increase the complexity factor. PDFs. PDFs are, as you've seen, there could be different formats of PDF. Someone may have a picture within a page on a PDF. Then the format would change. Other may not have, right? Invoices. There are plenty of formats each and every customer will have of the invoices. It would get difficult. You'll have to write rules for each and every PDF then. Similar to that is Word. Word is again a very difficult input source, because with Word it is English, it is sentences. There is not a very great pattern that you can find from a word. Within a word you can have a table, within a word you can have paragraphs. So all these will increase the level of complexity. And the emails, I mean, emails are just English. Everybody can write whatever they want in an email body. Computers cannot read and understand what has been written. It is the best form of an unstructured data. Emails are the best form of unstructured data, example of an unstructured data, right? So we should avoid those. Best is if it's an Excel input. Image based automation, again, image based automation, what do we say? We have seen um, Citrix environments, best example. Citrix environments, earlier days when we didn't had computer vision, we didn't had the Citrix plugins that we have now. It was so difficult because it was completely image. We couldn't find selectors. Without selectors, you know how difficult it is. The developers would understand. They would not want to do a process which has Citrix involved in it. Not the first process to be chosen. Um, because with images, it is very difficult to maintain. Pixel changes, resolution changes, all these would affect, the bot would fail. And invariably, our environments are never same for the customers. While you go for an implementation, you would understand that uh, a test environment or a development environment is different to that of a test environment and different to that of a production environment, and it would keep on failing. So you'll keep on changing the code. Free text emails is what I mentioned. Again, free text, very difficult to understand for the computers, and we don't know what kind of logic do we write from free text. Structured inputs, again, machine readable digital inputs. Avoid most of the scanned PDF images, free flow text. We have already spoken about it. And then type of applications. Now there are few type of applications which is not very friendly with our RPA tools, right? So applications like Java applications. I don't know why mainframe is mentioned. I loved mainframe applications. It's so easy to develop. But yeah, there are few mainframe applications which is really old, for which you do not get those emulators. If you don't get those emulators, then it becomes very difficult, because then again, it is image based. So yeah, I think that's the reason that we have put mainframe applications. SAP, there are plenty of SAP versions which is not very friendly. SAP, the web version, you would not find proper selectors. You would find the complete div getting selected, the complete paragraph getting selected, rather than the element that you're looking for, right? Web-based applications, plenty of web-based applications, Java-based applications, right? .NET applications, though most of the .NET applications are friendly, but then there are few desktop .NET applications which has really troubled us in past. Um, MS Office. Now, MS Office is actually a good one. So this type of applications is not only about the negative side, it is the positive side. So most of the MS Office applications, if you get that, it is good, uh, other than PowerPoints. Now, I don't know what would you want to automate from a PowerPoint. It is more to do with the output can be presented in a PowerPoint rather than an input, not a great source of an input, PowerPoints. Okay, so these are few of the process complexity factors that we should look into. And these would help us define the complexity, the low, medium, and high. And you would see in the future slides, how will that impact our timelines and typically the ROI. All right. So now, since we know a few of the complexity factors from the previous slide, now we will try to structure that and align those into a table, and bucketize them into low, medium, and high. Now, this table is a very good example that I've found, and we practice it as well. But I mean, there are better ones, of course, people use. It is very similar to what other customers are also using. But I find it really, really handy and very easy to understand. So what we tend to do in this is we do not change anything which is mentioned under the low, medium, and high. So we don't change any numbers there. What we only do is we color the cells which it applies to, right? So for, let's say, a process which is having a number of applications, let's say there is 3 applications. So we don't change anything, we just highlight the range. So where does 3 and 4? So there's medium complexity, which says the range is 3 and 4. We have the number of applications 3, so we highlight the 3 to 4. Similarly, go to the number of screens. Now, from the number of applications to the number of screens, within those 3 applications, we have around 30 screens. Now, again, we see what is the range. So 1 to 4, no, that's not very high. We have 30 screens. So medium complexity, again, 4 to 40 is the range. Yes, 30 falls within that. So we highlight the medium complexity. More than 40, it is to do with the high complexity. Again, number of business logic rules, right? So this is the rule based thing that we spoke about. So again, we highlight something if the business logic rules falls within 5 to 50, and it should include the alternative flows, right? So every exception, every different variations of the process, it should include them as well, all the flows. So if all the if conditions, all the conditions is covered, and we understand that it lies within medium complexity, we highlight the medium complexity. Scale of exception handling expected. So in this example, the low complexity had low exception handling, so the low was highlighted. And similarly, going forward, we have data types. We say the data types is digital, structured, standardized, data handling required. Now, what is the handling required? This is another addition to the data type handling. What do we do with the data? Most of the time we copy from one place, we paste it into the other application. But there are times when you have to copy, paste, you have to read, you have to modify the data as well, put some formulas, change the data format, and then there are even higher complexity data handling, which is to enrich the data, to add more complex formulas to it, generate some inference out of the data, a little bit more mathematical sense, and then use usage of PDF data extractions, because PDF data extractions, if it's a scanned PDF, it would be to convert them to a digital and then format them into a table format and then understand what the data is. So it's a little bit of work there required. So all those categories would be placed under the high complexity, right? So then we have the process redesign required. This is if the process is not stable, or we understand the process requires a lot of changes to begin with. So this, if it is yes, then it is actually a high complexity. If it's a significant process redesign, minor changes, okay, we can manage with minor changes. No process changes required, it's a low complexity, very easy to understand. System integrations, this too is actually a good factor to look into. There are times when UI path alone with the activities it has cannot process or cannot have all the activities um, defined natively, right? So we have, let's say, again, PDF image extractions. So we tend to use Abby. We have Google Cloud. We have other things that we can look into. If we can use APIs for some scenarios. So these are integrations. Now, if we have third-party integrations, it becomes a little complex, because then you need to understand, the developer has to understand and learn how to add those integrations as well, right? So it's an extra effort that the developer should do, and it increases the time in the development stage. Plus, system integration also comes with like different licensing, so it gets complicated at the end. And then associated level of operational risk. Now, this is something which the business would answer. Operational risk, yeah, this is a process which is very critical, time bound. We have to complete this within certain SLA. If we have to do that within certain SLA, we have to code it in such a way, in an optimized manner, that it should complete the processing within that time. Because if we don't, there are penalties. So we should not look for processes to start with, which has these kind of conditions. While most of the processes does, but there are a lot of processes where the SLAs are pretty high and the bot speed is anyways very fast. So not a major factor, but again, you should always keep this in mind. So once we have understood every criteria and we have colored every uh, eligible rows from the columns, low, medium, and high, we count the highest number of colored rows in the column, and that defines quantitatively which is the bucket that this process should go into, a low, medium, or a high. So in this scenario, there's nothing high, there's couple of lows, but the most number of highlighted rows is in the medium complexity, and we can then say confidently that it's a medium complex process, right? And with that comes your typical end-to-end delivery duration. So through all the automations and through all the customers that we have dealt with experience, we have seen a low complexity process end to end takes around 4 to 6 weeks. Even though we say that we can do it in 2 weeks, this is on the highest number that we can think of, right? So, and these numbers can actually change based on company to company, right? Let's say you're doing it for one company, and if you have experience of 5 processes that you have done for that company, then you can define these numbers for that, and that becomes the trend, and that becomes the um, basically that becomes the numbers that the company has benchmark for each of the complexity duration or implementation duration for each complexity. But more the sample size, the numbers would increase, because then you would face different challenges. Sometimes a low complexity process may get completed in couple of weeks. Sometimes it takes 6 weeks, right? So you give a range. I hope everybody is clear with this. If not, just note down your questions. We'll take it later on. Right. So what we have defined so far or seen so far is what we currently do, right? Which is manual. The business analyst or how to identify the process is pretty manual. Why is it manual? There's a business analyst from our side. There's an SME from their side. They both sit together. They look into the business analyst. The SME will perform his or her activity from top to bottom for a number of records, and the business analyst would draft those steps, ask the relevant questions, and then define the as is process, take screenshots, mark those screenshots, etc., and then uh, design the PDD, right? So that's what is being done currently. So that's intuition based. But we have also progressed from this to something more standard, more structured, more methodological, methodology based, and we have added more tools to it, right? So from manual to a more standard, what is standard? So earlier, let's say a standard could be as simple as the standard PDD document format. We didn't had a document format earlier, but now since with experience, now we know what all things should we capture for a process, for a typical process to be in the PDD. It became a standard for that, right? So we should have exceptions, we should know the stakeholder names, we should know the system hardware requirements, software requirements, what all access, assets, etc., etc. Everything can be mentioned. So that became a structure. What is the method? The method is now so we would define that we would require an SME, we would define how we will do it, um, what all sections we will cover in a day, what all sections we'll cover in the second day, etc. So we'll define a method as well. And then there are tools. Now then there are various tools with which you can take very smart screenshots, right? And you can take smart screenshots. You can also, you have a Windows tool which can record up to 100 to 200 screenshots as you are working, so it becomes easier. So those tools got introduced, and then you can highlight in a better manner of the fields that you want to enter into, or extract data out of, right? So we introduce those tools. We didn't stop there. We introduced something called as process mining. You would have heard this term. Um, it's got introduced a couple of years back, and it has now picked up a lot. Process mining or process intelligence. What exactly does process mining do? It's again a software. It's a software that would sit on your SME's computer, and while he or she is performing their activity throughout the day, it would record each and every step. It would record each and every step, and then companies like Celonis, Minute, these are market leading tools or market leading companies that have come up with process mining. Not that UiPath is behind it. UiPath has also introduced its own. So once you have recorded, these recordings would be sent back to Celonis or whichever company you're being using the process mining tool from. It would be sent to them. They would give you back a visualized report, which would tell you, so this is the whole process that you're doing. Section of the process can be automated. It would not say very precisely that it can be automated, but with again the characteristics that you had, you can identify that, okay, this is the section which can be automated. So and then you would also understand, or it will give you, these are the areas which is a bottleneck. So these are the areas, there are opportunities for re-engineering. You can do a Six Sigma green belt project, black belt project. So it is not only, the process mining is not only for the RPA team, it is also for the process re-engineering team. They both can use it to identify opportunity areas. It is not saying process, it is only giving you areas. So Celonis and Minute does that for us. But now what we have gone up to is we have now something called as smart recorder, right? So smart recorder, different companies have different names. We call it task capture. Excuse me. So what does smart recorder do? Now smart recorder, as it is the latest one, it has taken experience from whatever has been the process so far. So it has the capability of a little capability of process mining. It is structured, it is methodological, it is a tool, and of course it also involves an SME, because that's the system on which the smart recorder will run upon, right? So what the smart recorder will do, we would go ahead and check in the further slides, but as of now, it's a very interesting thing. It reduces a lot of effort of business analysts. And let's see some numbers or some data what the other companies are talking about. So they say Minute is what they say is almost 50% of RPA opportunities are currently being missed. Now, currently being missed could be for various factors, right? It could be missed because we don't have capacity. We just have one poor business analyst who's who's burdened with so much work that it would get missed. But then there are times like there could be other factors like most of the processes are using Citrix, most of the processes are not standard, or most of the processes have not been looked upon itself. So we are more focused on the last one, which is not looked upon itself. So this process mining techniques or the smart recorder techniques would at least help you with that. It's so that at least you look into most number of processes in a faster time. The more number of processes you look in a faster time, your pipeline would increase drastically. The more number of pipeline you have, more number of opportunities, then you can prioritize better. Then you know which one is giving me the right ROI. What should be the first one that we should target? So very important. 20 to 30%, there's a reduction of effort against manual processing. So if I can ask few of the business analysts to tell me, let's say you have to design a PDD from the beginning, where you first set up a meeting with the SME, you understand the process to a complete PDD completion, which is an approved PDD. How much day on an average so far have you taken? So you can post it on the chat. 3 to 4 days. Yeah, I mean, 3 to 4 days in an ideal a low process, a low complexity process. Yeah, 3 to 4 days. You set up a meeting, you go sit along with the SME. Most of the time, if it is right information has been shared in the first day, then you can complete at least the whole process, screenshot on the first day, or take the screenshot, at least draft those screenshot in a proper format, check everything has been covered or not, re-verify with the SME. Once you have re-verified with the SME, then you go back to the business and showcase that this is what we have understood about your process. Please go ahead and check it and let us know if this is correct or not. Right, so there are lots of steps. There are approvals in where in required, and I'm sure, I mean, to get an approval itself will take a couple of days, and most of the time there is one or two scenarios, maybe more, which the SME would have definitely missed. Right, we have faced it, and they never share the most correct information at the first time. So it's always a to and fro that we do. So 3 and 4 days, 3 and 4 days, little less, but yeah, on an average, I can say at least 4 days for sure, right? But in a typical, I would say it takes around 6 to 8 days, yeah, to complete end to end, 6 to 8 days. This is a very important step. If we do not do this right, we basically are looking for failures down the line, right? We have not captured most of the things, then the development doesn't happen for all scenarios, then then the client's expectation is not met, and it goes round and round, right? So 6 to 8 days typically, I would say, I can confidently say that it takes 6 to 8 days, right? But then with usage of these, you would also know that where exactly does the time take. Is it to understand the process, is it to capture the screenshots, or is it to draft that PDD, which we don't like, right? To put the screenshots and then mark the screenshots and try to figure out yourself if we have done it properly or not, put all the informations. And we always know that exceptions is the most uh, troublesome part of the PDD, because that's never complete. So PDD creation itself takes a lot of time, at least a couple of days. I take a couple of days to prepare it, and then we're not sure if it is complete. So using of these techniques, the process minings or the smart recorders that we would see in a minute, these would help you to design PDDs within minute and with accuracy, because it's a recorder. It actually records all the steps being done. If the person is not doing it properly, it would capture that as well, because it would throw up somewhere an error in the system. So it would capture that as well. So it captures errors, it captures most of the screens that it can. So the PDD is more accurate and it creates it in minutes. As I said, yeah, increased accuracy of, so if the PDD is more accurate, your effort estimation will be accurate, nearly accurate, and then the automation potential, right? So then you know, the solution architect can come in and say, okay, step number one, yeah, we have activities related to UiPath. This step can be done technically. So yes, just so it would be easier for them to then calculate the automation potential for the process. So 70%, 80% of the process can be automated. He can quickly find out, right? So with that, we move to smart recorder. Oh, nice slide. Good old UiPath Office we miss. Um, but let's focus on the task capture. So three main areas of usage or benefits that the task capture provides us is it makes more detailed and accurate process definition documents, right? It improves the relationship between the BAs and the RPA developers. They are never good friends, right? Because BAs would say I have taken all the steps. Developers would say you have not, and once they find out, then the BAs have to come back again. Uh, they're never good friends. So it improves the relationship on a lighter note. And it works with Automation Hub. People who knows Automation Hub, that's another product that we have. So this helps you, the Automation Hub will help you to have everything from start to finish on one single platform. Task capture, once you use it, it would automatically then create a project, and it would put the document like the PDD in that project saying that the PDD is now complete, a step is complete. So it's works well with the Automation Hub as well. Right, so let's understand what the capture capabilities are very quickly. We see that it captures in-depth processes. So we have two ways: we have capture the process, or you create a template and then capture the process. Right, so you go ahead and click capture process and let the SME just complete what they are doing. Secondly, it starts developing, you can start development today itself, because it will, end of the day, it would give you a XAML file, it would give you a workflow file. It captures screenshots as well. And with the screenshot that it has captured, you can go ahead and edit those screenshots. You can mark areas, you can highlight areas. And then finally, it gives you as an output, it would give you the process definition document and a sample, or not a sample, but a skeletal workflow for you. So it's faster for the developers as well, because they know at least the crux of the process. And of course, BA's time is also saved on preparation of the PDDs, and it is structured. All the PDDs would be of the same structure, same format. So it's a win-win for both of them. So with that, I think I have tried to capture everything that we might do while looking to identify the right processes for automation. I know this is a huge topic. With the time that we have been allotted, I try to capture most of the things. So with that, I would say thank you for to all. We are now open for questions, but before that, yeah, do not forget to register yourself for the UiPath Developer Conference 2020. It's coming up on September 2 to 3. So go ahead and register if you have not. We can provide the link to you if you do not have it.
Thank you, Anurith. Thanks a lot for your session. So we do have some question.
Okay.
So probably you may read from the chat. And
Oh,
otherwise,
sure.
guys, you can unmute and ask any question as well.
Yeah, definitely. So let me complete the chat ones first, and then come back. So where do I start with? So I'll start with, so if we want to break down duration in each phase for end-to-end delivery, so Vikas, if you can just explain your question a bit, if you can unmute yourself and explain that question.
And can we go back to that slide, please,
Which
where we
one?
the slide where we try to break down the phases? Uh, Quite a
The
few more.
the first
Yeah,
one?
that's one. No, 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 no. Go forward now.
Go forward. This one?
No more. Move
This
forward.
one?
Yes, there. So
Okay.
we are talking about low complexity, maximum complexity, and you put up a right point. It based on the organization depend upon. Now,
Correct.
typically end-to-end delivery with 7 to 9 weeks where
Hmm.
take a medium complexity. So
Hmm.
if we want to break down from requirement gathering to
Hmm.
uh, your end delivery,
Hmm.
okay, uh, how much time a development should take, how much time basically requirement gathering should. Yeah, I know working in agile, it's very that everything works parallelly, but
Right.
there has to be some clear specification. Okay, after 3 days of business analyst effort, a
Yeah.
developer should kick in and start designing their base
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
I'm looking for that type of breakdown.
okay, okay, I understand, So yeah, I mean, as I told you, this whole topic is a very vast one, and this is one of, again, a major area that you have brought up, right? So actually, you cannot define a very proper breakdown of these weeks, right? Because it depends again on a lot of factors. So of course your project manager, with the experience he or she would have, they would define a template based on 7 to 9 weeks. They would break down the efforts. So typically 30% of your initial phase would be goes into your the prepare RPA phase, which is your PDD creation, which is your business case creation. And I've not touched upon the business case creation also. In some places or some customers, we have to create the business case as well, so that to get the buy-in for from the business, that with all the foundings, all the observations, this is the business case, do you approve the project or not, right? So in some customers we have to do that. So 30 to 40% I would say goes, the first 30% is what it takes, you know uh, the PDD stage. And then the next 50%, which covers up to 80%, then is your SDD and your complete development time, right? And then the rest 10% you can give it to your testing. If it is very well coded, you can reduce few time there, here and there, from that, and the results are proper, then actually the testing can be faster. And then 10% is a buffer time that you can keep for deployment, because you don't know the current infrastructure, though you should know the current infrastructure before you start off the project. But then you can keep 10% as a buffer for deployment on a production, which actually, if you look into, is not much of a effort, right? It is just a publish, and if the infrastructure is correct and done correctly, it hardly takes around 10 minutes. And then you can put it on orchestrator, just define some robots, and you're good to go. So that's how we split: 30, 50, 10, and 10,
Thank you. Makes sense.
right? But yeah, I mean, if anyone has other observations that you have so far seen in your organizations and your experience, do share. Not an issue. Okay. I have Pooja who says, does the end-to-end delivery includes hypercare as well? Well, no, because delivery is not hypercare. Hypercare is post-production activity. So what we are talking about is only up to production, right? And hypercare is something which you agree with the customer that, okay, there's 5 days of hypercare that will give you post-production, something like that. So we don't include hypercare time here. Please share security aspect to be considered during end-to-end complex estimation. So Manish, if you can just elaborate this a bit.
Yeah, sure. So, in fact, first of all, thanks for this session. Really, really helpful for us.
No problem.
Just on my point of view is around the security aspect, which is somewhere in terms of what sort of maybe the access related things we need
Hmm.
to keep in our
Hmm.
mind, some assumptions we need to be
Yeah,
clear of
yeah,
before preparing or working on any solutioning.
yeah.
Those type of things. Because when I see, because I have the one of the experience where we are interacting with an external environment and we have some security checks need to be passed out before preparing for any solutioning. So
Sure,
those type of things I'm just
sure,
been
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
looking for.
That's
So
that's actually also criteria. Correct, correct. Um, should not exceed more than 5 business days for low to medium processes. I agree, but somehow it does. Uh, we asked for demo and BlueWorks documents in hand, and after that, 3 to 4 days. All right. So you asked for demo and then the document in hand, which would take few days, and then 3 to 4 days. Okay. Is task capture commercial or available for free trial? It is available for free trial for enterprise customers, and of course commercial is anyways available. So if you're working for a customer, a UiPath customer, which is an enterprise customer, yeah, there are free trials which you can actually use and see its capabilities. Is it worked on Citrix as well? So Harshit, what exactly, which point do you want to highlight here while you say it worked on Citrix as well?
Hi.
Hi.
So while using the First of all, thanks for the session. It's very
No
useful.
problem. No problem.
And I am asking because, like Citrix, we are not getting the selectors. So is the smart recorder is also work on that basis, or on which basis it works actually?
No, so smart recorder will actually work on images for a Citrix environment. Yeah, it would only work on Citrix environment. But smart recorder is uh, if you run once you have the XML is generated, the workflow is generated. If you run it, it would actually perform the same steps with the same input, right? But if you change the input, it may fail because then the image would also change. So you would have to remodify a little bit to make it more stable and make it more what I say robust. It is like any other automation recording, right? You'll anyways have to change a little bit here and there. You'll have to create those variables, data tables, etc.
Okay, thanks. That's
No problem. Tanveer has said, does it have something to do with selectors? Yeah, of course. I mean, for natively applications, natively connected applications like a web-based or desktop applications, it would give you the selectors as well. Santosh is asking, while capturing the screens, how can we assure client for data security for a banking process? So while capturing the screens, since it is installed on their infrastructure, if they allow to install itself, that means it has passed the security threat. And then running that software would not be a lot of an issue, but yeah, I think that's all it can. I mean, if you have allowed to install the software, that's all. That's all you need to worry for any customer, banking or insurance or telecom, where the data is very protected. And it is not sending to any cloud, so don't worry about it. It would remain on the system itself. All right, so with that,
Yes,
all the
just
chats
one
are
question.
completed. Vikas has how this BA
Sorry.
role integrate with citizen developer. Interesting. That's another interesting question. Now, BA with a citizen developer, actually would not invest BA in a citizen developer model. Citizen developer model, the BA role would be played by the person who is developing itself. So we'll have dual roles played by the person. They will be the developer as well as the BA. Sorry, somebody has some questions?
Pooja has another question.
Yes. I'm
Voice
sorry,
is
Pooja,
not
I
clear.
cannot hear you. Yeah. Maybe you can just type it out.
Yes, I have one question
Who
around
decides the process complexity, BA or developer? Hmm. What do you feel? Does the BA do the BA require some technical know-how of the RPA tool or not? Let me ask you that first. Do you think you should know UiPath even if you are a BA? You should know the capabilities of the UiPath Studio.
I guess yes.
Yes.
Yes, right.
Yes.
So if you are having that kind of a knowledge, it is the document which we are submitting is submitted by the business analyst. So responsibility for that document and the data within that document is of the business analyst. You can of course refer your developers to come in and help you out, but typically the responsibility is business analysts.
Okay. So thanks, Anirudh, for answering this question, but I have an extended point to it.
Yeah.
On the slide number 8, I don't find the, can you add the volume? I want to ask my question from, for an example, we have two processes
All
for
right,
one,
let me reach slide 8. Which one would that be?
that complexity
Slide
slide
this
only.
one. Okay, okay. Yeah, yeah.
So my question is, we have two processes. One process, very critical process, but
Mhm.
the outcome of that process is only hardly 1.75 or 2 something FT. But there is another process which includes only the simple Excel manipulations or simple automation, something like that. But we have a very good amount of the FT because of the volume. So out of both the processes, which process can be considered as a more complex one? So I want to understand the complexity from a BA perspective, from a developer perspective, and management perspective also. Because
Okay.
management is more eager to automate that process, to push that process into the RPA backlog, which is having a lot amount of the saving in it.
Right, right. So what you have asked is more to do with the business case now, right? So what we are trying to showcase here is to quantitatively classify a process into buckets of complexity, right? So with these inputs, it qualifies for a low, medium, and a high. That's understood, right? Now you say there are Excel usage, there's mostly Excel, there's one application, so of course it would be a low complexity. Management would also see that, okay, there are high number of FTEs. What is the kind of saving that we can get out of that? Definitely good. So even from a management point of view, I think that might get signed off very quickly without any issues. So yeah, that's a low hanging fruit. We can always target that first. But there are situations, right? Something which is critical for them. I would give you an example from my experience. I had worked with a customer recently during the COVID times with a customer who is into the sanitizers business, right? They were not doing very great before the COVID happened, but post COVID, the sanitizer demand got increased 10x times. They didn't had so many people to process the purchase orders. So what they told was they were not looking for savings here. They were looking for processing the orders on time. There was no SLAs as such, but they did not want the customers to wait for sanitizers not getting delivered on time during these times. So this was a critical time, this was a critical process, and they chose this process, they prioritized this process, even though there were other processes which were easier this way, which were giving more benefits. As I told here, there was no savings. We did not fire any FTE, we added more bots to the process, so it is more cost actually they took, but this was critical for them, right? So it depends on the situations. What is the strategy of your management? What is the management's priority right now? Quantitatively, the Excel thing will definitely win, but yeah, it's a management's call. You just give them both the scenarios, you just give all the data that they require, all the information that they require, and let them take a call.
Okay, okay, thanks, Anirudh. Thank you.
So Anirudh, before you take a other question, so one thing, because you mentioned process mining, so just in case if you guys have experience on process mining, you can leave a review for on G2, and then probably you can earn a $25 USD. So I have just mentioned a mail where you can send your approval mail to claim this.
How come we never get this?
Yeah, you don't get it. You can't review UiPath.
All right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. Take other question.
Yeah. Vibhor, do you have those questions with you?
Yeah, I have one question from Manish again. Can Task Capture integrate with SharePoint or Microsoft Team?
Yes, it does not. Yeah, I mean, it does very easily. It does not integrate as such, but yeah, it captures the informations what you're doing, whichever application, irrespective of any application that you're using.
Okay.
Vibhor, hi
Yeah,
Vibhor.
yeah. Hi.
Yeah, so I'm sitting in Europe area and having a lot of collaboration in US based organizations in a massive employee based. People are having these licenses of UiPath for a huge volume of, but actual utilization is not happening at the ground floor. That's the way. And they have tried many of the options. We had a merger right recently, 2 months before, and those organizations also which they came down. And there is a lot of talk within the organization about this citizen developer. Is there any way we can arrange a session or something and I can bring a lot of people from my organization only who are looking for these types of information, specifically on citizen developer and adopting it.
We'll
People
be
have
happy to do that.
licenses. They are confused what type of license, where to use within their departments. So uh, the actual usage is, I will say, not even 5 to 10% what the product is capable for.
Awesome. Awesome.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I will be happy to do that. So what I can do, I will again connect you with my one of colleagues. So now because we have a lot of chapters across the globe, so probably we
Yeah,
can
yeah,
plan a session in that specific chapter so that people can attend based on their time zones. Because if we do it in
yeah.
India, probably it will not be very comfortable for them.
Yeah, yeah. That's the main point where, and the basic challenge which I will say in about this process, which I have faced. Correct me if I'm in this forum, because business analyst role is the major critical role which I see at my end, because this is the starting point. If anything goes wrong from here, the end is totally wrong.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah.
Right.
Technically at this stage, if we try to analyze all those things, getting the right process, what actually the process is in a huge bigger organization where they are majorly involved in their day-to-day delivery, it's very difficult to even capture the right process and the right steps and the right paths, because two
Absolutely.
reasons two reasons. First of all, they are not documented. Okay, and then you will be pushed to go on the ground floor, basically where the massive production and massive work is going on. Then those people fear that if they tell all these information to them, they don't have anything to do, so they might get redundant in next 6 months. And those people who perform these day-to-day massive continuous transactions, they don't have the highly qualified skill sets, so they don't want to share their steps. And if they share you the steps also, they will try to take you every time in a different paths. So it becomes very complicated as a business analyst to get a right thing.
Sure.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so because
being
I will
this,
surely plan a session for citizen developers. So we already have a plan. If you see that
yeah,
usually most of this session we were doing which were targeted to RP developers, right? So next
yeah,
on
yeah,
29th we are doing a session for infrastructure guys, right? And again we are doing another session on the licensing because a lot of RPA developers have challenge understanding which license should be used, right? So we have experts on from our licensing team and they will be able to address all the questions related to licenses, right? Similar
fantastic.
way we have created another chapter which is for the learners, and in this group we invite anyone, whether it's a student or somebody who wants to change their field to RPA or something, they can join that chapter and you will see a lot of a series of sessions over there so that people can start their journey from RPA and they can complete the certification as well. And plus third persona will be citizen developer where we will be targeting on Studio X.
That's good. Thank you.
I think I'm already
Okay.
connected to you on LinkedIn. In case not, I'm just sharing my link so anyone can connect
No, no,
with me. And if you have any question, yeah,
yeah, we are
yes, we are
connected.
connected. I think we have
Yeah,
exchanged words also before.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there is a massive means basically end user education and uh,
Yeah, I
basically.
completely agree because this is going to be our focus as well to for this one robot per person. This is how we are going to achieve that. Yeah, go
Uh,
ahead, guys. In case you have any
wha-
other
wha-
question. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, one robot per person is not being sold at the time when the salespeople sell this. Individuals think that you are giving a solution like a zip file which gets installed and anyone can zip it. Okay, so that's a wrong message going from the sales team. And where when the department it comes down, they say this organization have UI path, but when then department is asked by those individuals